very good. Okay, so that's kind of where I want to pick up. I wrote this differently. There are two kind of sections here. One is Jesus and one is the tribes. I've got the tribes second. Probably would have been better if we did them first, but we'll start with Jesus. So we did talk about that at the very end. We kind of ran out of time and there was some confusion. You know, where did the lineage of Jesus come in? How was that all tied together? And what we didn't really talk about, but also add some confusion, is there's two different lineages of Jesus. You guys know where those are?
Jesus' father on earth and Mary.
Yes, yep, very good. So his mom and dad, which was news to me. I really didn't pay a lot of attention. The fact that they put effort into the lineage of Joseph, the father of Jesus, because genetically, talking in human science terms, he wasn't related to Joseph, but it was important. It was recorded. Go ahead.
It was usually the lineage. Usually was carried through the fall.
Correct. That was tradition. And that's important. Hang on to that thought because we're going to come back to something.
You got both of them.
We're going to, yeah. We're going to come to something really tricky. So hold on to that thought. That's important. Okay. So Mary and Joseph, obviously Jesus' mom and dad. Does anybody know where those are in the Bible? You don't have to give me book, chapter, and verse, just book. And Luke. Does anybody know which is which? Well, let's find out. I can get my thing to work. Okay, so I found this nifty cartoon. Everybody's really goofy looking, some kind of Middle Eastern for some reason. But it goes all the way back, starting with Adam, and they followed the chronology all the way through. And I tried to do as much double checking as I could. And even though it's a silly looking cartoon, I think it's pretty accurate, right? So nobody here would argue that we know Jesus comes from the lineage of David. That was prophesied and it's written time and time and time again, right? So we can get that in a straight line all the way through, starting with Adam, going to Noah. Noah's some the big guys, we got big heads. Adam's got a big head. Noah's got a big head. Abraham's got a big head. And then there's David, right? So you got some other important names in there: Isaac, Jacob, Judah. That was a big one we got kind of hung up on last week, which of Jacob's sons was involved in. But both the lineage involving Jesus's mom and dad go back through Judah, obviously ending with David, and that's where it forks. And that's another reason that I always just thought David was a big important guy in the Old Testament, and that's why his name's written a lot. But David's a checkpoint, because it splits off of David. So David's one of the maybe not most important places to go back to, but a really important place to look at because it forks there. And that makes it tricky, right? And the other place it forks is over here. Zerubbabel, and read it up close. That's no better. Shalitiel, I think is how you say the name. Shealtiel. Anybody thinks they can do better, go for it. All right, so zoomed it in a little bit. Straight line, Adam on down. Adam, Seth, Enos. We can skip some hard names. Methuselah is one we see a lot. Enoch, Lamech, Enoch, Shem. I've never even seen that one before. That's a fun name. Arphaxad. Yeah, so you can have fun with these for a little while. But obviously, big names. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, David. Big chunks of the Old Testament, and obviously it is the Old Testament all the way up until Jesus is born, right? But straight line, these are big names we talk about all the time. So you go a little bit past David and we get into murkier waters, pieces of the Old Testament we don't study a whole lot, and a lot of names we're not as familiar with. And again, it forks right there at David, and they separated it nicely for us, blue and pink for Joseph and Mary. You can see them at the very end. Interestingly enough, Mary is the only female on this list, so that makes it confusing, and that's kind of important for over here as well. But they start with the two sons of David, Nathan, Solomon. Solomon is the line of Matthew leading to Joseph, and Luke is the line of Nathan leading to Mary. So, is anybody familiar with that little cross in the middle? Zerubbabel and Shalatiel? Anybody got a guess? I had to do a lot of reading on this one. And honestly, everybody's just transfixed on it right now. And so was I. There's really, you can just try to figure it out with your brain and there's no way to do it, right? Because even if you try to get women involved in here, it goes from man to man and man to man, and two men don't equal one more man. Maybe in today's day and age, somebody might try to argue that, but obviously not, right? So something weird had to go down there, right? And so if you read in, we find the right verses. Let's just read it. Let's go through it together. Okay. Bib, do you want to read Matthew 1, 12 and 13? Okay, so let's. That's good. You can stop right there. So let's connect the dots to the name you just read, right? So it's kind of out of order, but you can just go dad begot son, son begot more son, son begot more son on down, right? So it starts with Jeconiah right there, right? He begat, there's that name again, even I'm having trouble with. Shealtiel maybe. I don't know. Somebody has a better way to say it, tell me. Shealtiel begat Zerubbabel, and Zerubbabel is kind of our anchor, right? Because we read the name Zerubbabel both times in Matthew and Luke, right? And then on from Zerubbabel, it named the other names she talked about, Ebiud, Eliakim, Azor, Zadok. Okay, now let's look at Luke. This is actually in Luke chapter 3, again, coming from the genealogy of David. I'm going to read that for me, Jim. Chapter 3 and 27.
Which was the son of Joanna, which was the son of Risa, which was the son of Zerubbabel, which was the son of Salatiel, which was the son of Neri.
Okay, so that almost seems like a contradiction, right? That one's a little more straightforward. It works from Joseph and Mary backwards, right? So here's the names he said: Jonan, Risa, Zerubbabel, Shealtiel, who was the son of Neri, right? So we got Shealtiel was the son of Jeconiah in Matthew, and we got Shealtiel was the son of Neri in Luke, right? Distilled down, that's essentially what it says in a couple of different words. All right. Really confusing, right? Because it doesn't necessarily say, well, it would make sense if Neri had a daughter and then Shealtiel married that daughter and then it forked, right? That's the common phylogenetic tree right there, right? But that's not what it says. So I could not find this anywhere in the Bible, and there's not a whole lot of biblical evidence for this other than historical tradition and practice. So who's got any ideas? There are two possible agreed upon options, and not one of them is definite or the other one's definite. The second one I like better, so that's the one I would encourage. But anybody have any kind of guesses on how this works? The first one's easy, but I felt like it was cheating, so I don't like it. So let me give you a hint. When we talked about the children of Israel, what was confusing about that? Okay, so what's the possibility here? Cop out. I thought so. That's quite possible. There you go. Somebody changed their name. Everything lines up. Like I said, I can tell you guys are as dissatisfied as I was with that answer. But that is option number one. Option number two, I'm going to read this one word for word as I read it in an article. First, let's read the book, chapter, and verse. Carl, do you want to read 1 Chronicles 3:17 through 19, please? Or Bonnie, or whoever wants to read. 1 Chronicles 3:17. Read through 19 for me. Oh yeah, we're doing all the hard stuff. Nobody feel bad for any pronunciations tonight. Okay, so summarized. First Chronicles chapter 3, starting in 17 and through 19, states that Jeconiah was the father of Shealtiel and Pedaiah, right? But the text says that Pedaiah's son was also called Zerubbabel, right? So we got an extra name that's not in the list up there. This is the name Pedaiah, right? But other passages state that Shealtiel was the father of Zerubbabel, right? So Shealtiel is the name that we see up there a couple different times, and he's the bridge between the two, right? So Zerubbabel's the anchor, and we know it forks from him. And Shealtiel's a name we see it a lot, but that's why he didn't draw it straight in from Zerubbabel, or from Jeconiah, the blue side, because it's a little bit broken up, right? So this shows that this could have been a case of a Levirate marriage, right? Anybody know what that is? The Old Testament? Yeah, the Levirate marriage, Levirate, Levirate, maybe is the way to say it.
When someone dies, the brother, they have to take his widow or wife to bear a child, carry his name.
That's the key right there, right? So who does the child belong to? The brother that died, right? So genetically speaking, he's physically, literally the son of the brother that was not married, right? But as far as lineage goes, he's recorded as the son of the dead brother, aka the first husband, right? So that's the one that was the most justifying to me, because we've seen that time and time again. That was really common practice in the Old Testament. And that makes a lot more sense as to why you'd have one guy come from two different dads straight on down, right? But that makes a little more sense if it was his brother's wife, I think is the way that it comes over, aka his new wife, right? Let me finish out reading where I was. A widow, this is just describing everything you guys just said. A widow of a childless man could marry his brother. When the woman gave birth, he would carry on the deceased father's name. And this is so that the man's name could go on, even if he died prematurely. Michael Brown writes, in the case of Zerubbabel, it would appear that the biological father was Pedaiah, the younger brother of Shealtiel, who died childless. Pedaiah then married the widow of Shealtiel in accordance with the laws of the Levirate marriage. And his firstborn son, Zerubbabel, was counted as the son of his deceased brother, Shealtiel, to build up the brother's family. Anybody have any qualms or contentions with that? It's still a bit fuzzy, but that's the best answer I could find, especially since it gets really chunky comparing First Chronicles to the Old New Testament. Correct. Right. I didn't mean to cut you off. Okay. I'm still amped up. I had a crazy day at work today, so you guys bear with me. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns about the lineage of Jesus? All right. Now we'll back up. We probably should have. Go ahead.
Look at
Joseph, the father of Jesus.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Josephs.
Actually, he's not this.
Correct.
I have to go to Mary. Genealogy of Jesus.
Right. Well,
Jesus.
If you'd have talked to me last week, I would wholeheartedly agree with you. But I don't necessarily now for a couple different reasons. And the biggest one being for what we just talked about with Zerubbabel there, right? What they cared about more than the genetics, which obviously they understood that, man plus woman equals child, right? They weren't that dumb, but they didn't understand genetics like we do and phylogenetic trees and so on and so forth. Don't get hung on the word phylogenetic, that leans on evolution, but family trees. And they really, really cared about the father more than anything, right? But I agree with you. I think the straight lineage is really important. And we can trace that back person to person. Even if you stick on the Mary side, there's not a whole lot of a jump. the jump is on Joseph's side. And like you said, when you get down to it, it doesn't necessarily matter because he wasn't physically related to Joseph. Maybe, who knows? Maybe God took half of Joseph's genetics and inserted them into Jesus. We don't know the science of it. And it's literally a miracle. So it's above what we can understand. And that's really way too far in the weeds. But I agree, right? What there's no contention on is the Mary line. You can draw a straight line. But again, my foothold here is two things. Number one, they cared about the man's line. Number two, they both trace back to David, right? So even if there is a jump, we go back to the same place, right? So we've got checkpoints. So there's checkpoint number ones with Zerubbabel, and there's not really any contention about Zerubbabel, right? He doesn't have a big head, but I'd give him one. Obviously, Joseph and Mary are a big one. David, and if we go back, we got our other, too far, sorry. We got our other checkpoints. David, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, consequently, Noah, and Adam, right? And you can see where things were kind of reset, right? Adam reset with Noah, literally. Abraham reset because, the God was with Abraham and his people specifically. And then, David was a big reset as far as kingdoms went on. And then it all got muddy, right? And so that's when God traced it straight to Jesus because mankind was letting him down time and time again. Let's Google it. I'm pretty sure Beersheba was Solomon's mom. Nope. Bathsheba was Nathan's mom. Maybe it's the same one. No, they're both David.
That's the one why they had to split there.
Mother of Solomon, son of David. Also agrees Bathsheba. So they had the same mom. Yeah. Solomon had 1,000 wives. There's a lot to pick from. So Bathsheba was a pretty important person according to God. We all know that story, but yeah. So the split isn't there. It's with the next generation, right? Because those guys are brothers. That doesn't really matter, right? But your kids aren't siblings with Rick's kids. They're first cousins. And then it goes on down sideways from there. Yeah. So David's the checkpoint, but yeah, we all learned something new there. I did. I didn't know that. I was confident about Solomon, but I wouldn't have said that about Nathan. I didn't know. Who else? I have a computer this week. Okay. All right. Now we move on to the fun stuff. All right. Can anybody name these guys without looking or without singing the song? I can. I'd probably have to sing the song. All right. Who are these guys? Sure. What'd you say? Are you sure? Right. I would have said that last week, and that's where I got myself in trouble up here too. Because again, a lot of stuff I'm telling you guys now, I didn't know it last week. So this is all new to me. So obviously we all understand that the 12 tribes come from the sons of Jacob. 12 and 12 makes 12. And that was easy enough in my mind. I like plain and simple. 1 + 1 = 2. But it's not necessarily that way, right? So let's name off. Okay. Too far. Come on, Zach. Let's just read them instead of trying to sing them in the order we know. Simeon, Issachar, Dan, Reuben, Joseph, Benjamin. These guys are important because they were, what were these guys to each other? Full brothers to who? Who was Rachel? His favorite. Good way to put it. All right. Asher, Gad, Naphtali, Judah, Levi, Zebulun. All sons of Jacob, not all of them full brothers. A lot of them half brothers. Who had the most sons? Which daughter? Very good. Okay, we'll come back to that. And I've got a nice branch graph up here, family tree again. All right, here's the tribes, a couple different maps so you can get an idea of where they sat, right? Here's what we've been studying the last several weeks. The physicality of what modern day Israel and those countries line up. And once they moved back into the land of Canaan, the tribes were apportioned land. Okay, so, and this was based off their inheritance, which is important. Starting from the bottom, right, in no particular song order again. Simeon, Judah, Reuben, Benjamin, Dan, Ephraim, Gad, Manasseh, and Manasseh again, Issachar, Zebulun, Naphtali, Asher. What's different between that and this?
Because they had two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim.
Very good. That's where I messed up too last week. We'll get to why that's important. Here's our family tree. Jacob had 4 wives. For all intents and purposes, we'll call them all wives. I believe he married them if we read the text properly. But Leah and Rachel were his actual wives, who were sisters, which is interesting genetically. So Joseph and Benjamin were more closely related to these guys than these guys. Anyways, you guys want a genetics lesson, we can have fun with that. Zilpah and Bilhah were the handmaids. That's the word I was looking for. Very good. Of Leah and Rachel accordingly. All right. So again, starting from the bottom, I worked hard on this, so somebody better appreciate it. Reuben, Simeon, Judah, Benjamin, Dan, Gad, Issachar, Zebulun, Naphtali, Asher. Pause right there. Look straight across the blue. Sons of Jacob, Reuben, Simeon, Issachar, Zebulun, Levi, doesn't have a star. Judah, Gad, Asher, Dan, Naphtali, Joseph, doesn't have a star. Benjamin. All right, we left a couple out. Manasseh and Ephraim, the sons of Joseph. All right, so we got our 12 tribes, and we've got 12, 13, 14 names. What's going on? Oh, we'll skip her. Okay, very good. All right, and what about Joseph? Why? They called him half tribes, actually. That was something I skipped over a lot. Well, and what's funny, they call him half tribes, but Manasseh's got pretty much more than anybody. Yeah. And that's, we're studying an awful lot about the important cities, right? Jerusalem's right up there in the top of Benjamin, but you know, we talked about a lot of these cities up here, up along the northern end of the Jordan, and most of that ended up in Manasseh. So if that's the half tribe, but they got most of the land, what's the deal there? How's that work?
Manasseh did not want to cross the Jordan River. I chose it for Joshua to cross. So, they promised Manasseh he could inherit that side of the Jordan River. You go to help.
Right. I think I've got some text on that a little bit, right? But why? So, do I have this written somewhere? If I don't, I'll say it. I remember it, but okay, I do have it written somewhere. All right. So, Joshua 14, 1 through 5. I'll read it since it's on the board. Now, these are the territories which the sons of Israel inherited in the land of Canaan, which is Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun. And the heads of the households of the tribes of the sons of Israel apportioned to them for an inheritance by the lot of their inheritance, as the Lord commanded through Moses, for the 9 tribes and the half tribe. For Moses had given the inheritance of the 2 tribes and of the half tribe beyond the Jordan, but he did not give the inheritance to the Levites among them. For the sons of Joseph were 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim, and they did not give a portion to the Levites in the land, as Rick just said, except cities to live in, with the pasture lands for their livestock and for their property. Thus the sons of Israel did just as the Lord had commanded Moses, and they divided the land. All right. So some more text I found on this. The tribe of Joseph, which originally they called it that at some point, or that was the idea, they split them into the half tribe. But the tribe of Joseph is one of the tribes in Israel in a biblical tradition, since Ephraim and Manasseh, often called the 2 half tribes, together traditionally constituted the tribe of Joseph. But it was not often listed as one of the tribes, in favor of Ephraim and Manasseh being listed in its place. Consequently, it was often termed the house of Joseph to avoid use of the term tribe. All right. Now, here's what I think it's in here. If it's not here, I'll talk about it. Somebody else want to read that? If not, I will. Go ahead.
obtain ransom to help the Levites from the inheritance of the you shall give the Levites pasture lands around the city. The city shall be theirs to live in, their pasture lands shall be for their cattle, and for their herds, and for all their beasts. Pasture lands of the cities which you shall give to the Levites shall extend from the wall of the city outward about 2 cubits around. You shall also measure outside the city on the side 2,000 cubits, and on the south side 2,000 cubits, and on the west side 2,000 cubits, and on the north side 2,000 cubits, with the city in the center. This shall become theirs as pasture lands.
2 more verses, please.
The cities which you shall give to the Levites shall be the 6 cities of refuge, which you shall give for the manslayer of to. And in addition to them, you shall give 42 cities. All the cities which you shall give to the Levites shall be 48 cities, together with their pasture lands. As for the cities which you shall give in the possession of the sons of Israel, you shall take more from the larger, you shall take less from the smaller. Each shall give some of his cities to the Levites in proportion to his possession which he.
All right, these are kind of intermingled, so we'll take them one at a time. So first is the tribe of Joseph, right? So Joseph's tribe is a portion was large, and they split it between his sons. And they called them tribes because they were big and really important as well, right? So why was Joseph a portion double? Let's back it up. Go ahead. What is Jacob famous or infamous for? Back up. When related to Esau? What's the deal with Jacob and Esau? Okay, so birthright was important. Jacob got the birthright. So 1 generation down, this guy's got a lot of sons, right? When we're talking about 2 sons, we're talking about Jacob and Esau. It's pretty cut and dry, right? Now we got 12 sons to split it between. Where's the birthright go? Did it go to the oldest, like it did his should have been his uncle, or not his dad, but
Well, Rachel was the one that he loved, and the first son of Rachel was Joseph.
there you go.
So that's why Joseph is.
So Joseph was the oldest of the real wife. So Joseph gets the birthright, even though by far he was not the oldest. And I think it probably lists the order, but what's an easy way of knowing Joseph's not the oldest? Right. But he had a bunch of older brothers, right? It was pretty clear that because he went to him and said, what? I had a dream that tells me that you guys should do what? Right. Yeah. Your baby brother tells you that, you're not real happy. Probably shouldn't go kill him, but they were mad enough to try to do that, right? So it's pretty clear just from that inference, right? It was listed chronologically, and I didn't read that. So if somebody wants, we can do that next week. But anyways, Joseph got the birthright. So his tribe, the house of Joseph, got a double portion. That was split in half. So that's where we have essentially what would have been 13 tribes, but we didn't have 13 tribes. We only have 12. So we had to lose one. Where did we lose one? What happened to the Levites? They just get the short end of the stick? Say it again. Why? All right. And did they live like Catholic monks? Very good. The cities of refuge, like we just read. And there was a lot of them. So we had basically pretty much 4 per, except for the, no. This is a different map, isn't it? I didn't pay a lot of attention to that. Let's got Manasseh up there on the other side. So 2 in Manasseh, if you count that. 4 Zebulun, 4 Issachar, 3 Naphtali, 4 Asher, 4 Ephraim, 4 Dan, 4 Benjamin, 4 Reuben, 4 Gad, and then Judah and Simeon. 1, 2, 3, 8, 9. So they got more. But if you look at the map, most of them weren't in Simeon, they were in Judah, right? There they all spread out. Okay. That's what I got for you. Who's got comments or questions? I didn't understand half of this as well as I thought I did last week. So if this is new to anybody, don't feel bad. Okay,